contribution of financial services, emergence of the digital economy, expansion of ICT services, increased private sector, subsequently continuing the digitalization economy, using the 2010 benchmark would no longer provide the most academic representation of Zambia's economy and reality. Therefore, we may want to ask, why has 2023 been selected as the new base year for this Gdp Rebasing? Following extensive assessment, Zambia selected 2023 as the new Gdp base year. The choice of 2023 relates to several considerations. Firstly, it represents a relatively normal economic year, following disruptions associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. Secondly, it is sufficiently resistant to capture the current structures and the economy. Thirdly, the year aligns well with the availability of benchmark data required for comprehensive GDP compilation. Therefore, using 2023 as a new reference year will therefore improve the accuracy, relevance, and international comparability of Zambia's national account. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just now speak to what has been done so far. The GDP rebasing exercise is one of the largest and most technically demanding statistical programs undertaken by Zambia Statistics Agency. Allow me to briefly highlight some of the major milestones achieved so far. 1, institutional arrangements. ZamStats as an agency have established dedicated governance structures, including the National Technical Working Group, sector technical teams, as well as collaborative arrangements with institutions across the national statistical system. These structures have ensured broad technical participation throughout the exercise. There's been a review of methodologies as well. Comprehensive reviews have been undertaken to ensure full compliance with the 2008 System of National Accounts, international classifications including ISIC Revision 4, and international best practices in GDP compilation. There's also been progress in terms of benchmark data collection. One of the most significant achievements has been the successful implementation of major benchmark statistical programs. First one being the 2025 Economic Establishment Census, which was successfully undertaken, the 2024 Household Budget Survey, and then we've also had the updated Statistical Business Register activities, as well as several sector-specific economic surveys. These benchmark surveys, ladies and gentlemen, provide the foundation for improving GDP estimates. Let me speak to the issue of administrative data integration. This has been a huge milestone as well. Recognizing that official statistics cannot rely solely on surveys, ZamStats has significantly expanded the use of administrative data obtained from institutions within the national statistical system. And these include information obtained from Zambia Revenue Authority, the Bank of Zambia, PACRA, government ministries, regulatory authorities, local authorities, and other public institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, as another achievement has been capacity building. ZamStats has also undertaken extensive capacity building programs for staff and stakeholders, including training in ISIC Revision 4 implementation, national accounts methodology, supply and use tables, administrative data integration, statistical quality assurance, and also training has been extended to institutions such as the Zambia Revenue Authority, Bank of Zambia, PACRA, to strengthen harmonization across the national statistical system. Let me end by also highlighting one key achievement, which is stakeholder engagement. And today is a testimony of this milestone, and it continues to reflect the engagement that we have. in this exercise. Throughout the rebasing process, ZAMSTAS has continued engaging key stakeholders through technical meetings, consultations, and awareness programs to promote transparency and build confidence in the exercise. Ladies and gentlemen, today's activity is one such event. The idea of this event is to continue to raise awareness on GDP rebasing exercise so that all our stakeholders understand it, and we have different ways of looking at it, and this is why we have our gallant panelists here. We're looking forward to your contribution in regards how you look at GDP rebasing. And the idea of this engagement is to make it as simple as possible in order to allow our users to understand this process, at least from your institutional point of view. I thank you for listening, and I look forward to our discussions.
Thank you very much, SD. Please, let's give her a generous round of applause. Thank you. And we must thank you very much for the work that you are doing with your team at ZAMSTAT. So this afternoon, a couple of questions for colleagues who are coming from various institutions. What is GDP? Why is it most important economic? Why is it one of the most important indicators? Why are we rebasing? Why is Zambia rebasing from 2010 to 2023? What are the main objectives of Zambia's GDP exercise, rebasing? Major data sources. Are we able to share with the audience here how we are getting this information? How are we sourcing the information that we are putting in this exercise? The main objectives, and what is your key message from the perspective of your sector? So, once again, I will introduce the panelists, and I'll start with Mr. Joseph Tembo, who is the Director for Economic Statistics at ZAMSTAT, sitting right at the far end. Let's give him a round of applause, please. And from the Zambia Association of Manufacturers, we do have Mr. Jiholola Kabandala, who is a policy analyst on data evidence. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you very much. And we do have also a representative from the Economics Association of Zambia, EAZ. You are welcome to today's event. We missed you in Ndola, but we believe you would have been there had you have lesser assignments. But you are welcome this afternoon. And this is Mr. James Chamnora. Let's give him a round of applause. We do have right next to me Ms. Malindi Msoni Shatore, whom I introduced earlier on from the Zambia Institute of Policy Analysis and Research. We give her a round of applause. The Investor of Zambia is known to be very efficient, but they are late today. You are late, sir. Introduce yourself.
My name is Austin Mwange. From the Graduate School of Business. Thank you.
He's a colleague. I haven't seen him in a long time. Dr. Mange, happy to see you once again. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. So we will start with, obviously, a few questions. Maybe, let me start with a very important panelist sitting right next to me. Don't be intimidated, madam. Speak your mind and share with us from the perspective of ZIPA. Why is GDP rebasing important for you as policy analysts and researchers?
Thank you very much. Just want to say thanks to ZAMSTAT once again for the opportunity. So I'm coming from a think tank, and one of our foremost roles is to provide, okay, I've been told to raise my voice. Yes, so one of our foremost roles is to provide advisory services to the government on public policy. So if you reflect on what public policy is, it's basically what the government chooses to do or not to do, either to address the problem or to achieve a desired outcome. So as a research institution, we collect information, package it, and produce recommendations to government. So now, if you look at what GDP tells us, and I think the Statistician General already alluded to this, is it will give us a picture of how big the economy is, what sectors are driving or contributing to the economy. It also helps us to assess how well we are doing with our efforts to diversify the economy, to transform or towards our priorities of economic transformation. Now, the challenge that happens is that GDP does not remain the same. It changes over time. So when the way we measure it doesn't keep up with these changes, we tend to base our advice on an outdated picture, if I may say. The way the economy looked in 2010 and how it looks now is very different. Right now, as we are seated, there are people that are following this discussion remotely because of digital innovations. Someone out there is ordering food or buying something online and it's being delivered to where they are. These changes were not as prevalent in 2010, but are now contributing significantly to our economy, and we need to update the way we are measuring GDP so that we can accurately capture them. When we don't do this, we risk overstating or understating the contribution of certain sectors to the economy. It may also make us give incomplete conclusions around how we are doing on issues of debt sustainability, domestic resource mobilization. I mentioned economic transformation earlier. So from the policy analyst perspective, this is a long overdue process, and it's something that will help us as research institutions actually give credible advice to the government. I think I'll end here for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We obviously maybe should tag your response to an identical institution, then this is the University of Zambia, UNZA. How important is this?
Thank you so much. I think this is very important, especially that whatever economic indicators we want to come up with the purpose is to make policy decisions. So our Statistician General was saying we need to be very simple in our explanation. So I'll give you an example. When you say, why is GDP rebasing important? It's the same as saying, why do you think we need the new Lusaka map? You see that? So if we are taking you, now we are walking. You see? So just as you may get lost, you may not identify places and make decisions on what you want to do. That's the same with variables that we include in the measurement or measuring our final goods and the value of our final goods and services over a period, say 1 year, or even if you are using quota and so forth. It's better you know where you stand than you don't know. It's like even at personal level, measuring your assets or your value. I think you may be measured wrongly. Let's assume there's a connection to debt. You know, the debt to GDP ratio, or at personal level, when we are trying to maybe seek financial assistance, we also look at how wealthy, how valuable you are, what's your net worth. So that also gives us an indication. So I think it doesn't mean, let's say, the debt that we have, maybe when we rebase, then it means like maybe we are a little bit better, but we are saying we have a clear picture, even on our national debt and other variables, macroeconomic variables as we set them up. Let me end here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. James, you look at the entire economy. You have obviously members from different stakeholder groups in the economy as Economic Association of Zambia. Obviously, based on the 2010 data and the 2010 economic map, as Dr. Mange has called it, how important is it to update this map to 2023 going forward, even as a country we are moving from
the last rebasement done going forward? So from that time, we've had new industries such as fintechs that have come up, new industries that have come up, decades. Most of the goods that were manufactured or produced were mostly tangible, also needs to be captured. So that way we've got a better comparison of year-on-year changes, growth in GDP as it happens. So it's more accurate. And what usually happens is a rebasing would increases the GDP statistically, not meaning that it will end poverty or reduce poverty. It will increase the GDP, which will also improve the country's GDP to debt ratio or debt to GDP ratio, which will make the country more credit worthy. Okay, it's basically it will tell us that obviously over time we've become a better country, although we were not capturing that information, and our credit worthiness is actually much better than we. It also talks to policy direction. We've got new industries and we've got new information. If you look at the 2010 statistics, we had just about 66,000 economic establishments. Right now we've got 400,000, over 400,000. And what that says is that when we're looking at policy formulation, we need to create policies that will talk to the new industries and the new establishments that have been created over time. Okay, I think I can stop there for now.
Thank you very much. Maybe before I come to Zam, let me come back to Madam. And maybe Dr. Mange, you need to comment on the point that he has brought in.
We measure the stock of debt and divide that by the GDP. So if the denominator changes, definitely the overall debt to GDP ratio changes. However, I must emphasize, this does not change the stock of debt. The stock of debt remains the same, but the debt to GDP ratio changes. Thank you.
Dr. Mange.
Just to add on, of course, the stock remains the same, but what you are owing, but your situation, of course, it goes a bit up the ratio, the GDP to debt ratio. But if you know when you are making decisions, even on the debt sustainability framework, that will definitely improve how you are looked at. Because imagine the economy has grown, because what we are saying here is that maybe we have been undervaluing ourselves. And in terms of the debt sustainability framework, you find that you are being graded even to be very high risk, you see, when in fact you are relatively better. But of course, when it comes to sustainability, we'll say you have to also follow where you are supposed to be. You don't necessarily, we are not saying we should be now careless and say, okay, we can now borrow as much as we want, but the issue of trying to ensure that we are very careful and also ensuring that you know, when it comes to debt sustainability, using any measure or even what we get in terms of credit ratings, these do assist. So our credit rating will be fairly okay, and I think you know that some of these credit ratings are so Eurocentric that they disadvantage us. And we further go on to disadvantage ourselves by not moving with time in terms of trying to see how big our economy has grown. So that's why even on the African continent, I think Zambia was one of the, I think last year, we were hosting the African credit rating meeting where we want to have our own credit rating agency so that we don't just concentrate on these ratings that I think their focus is to ensure that African countries don't have the capacity, are not considered to be worthy. So that's why we are now moving on to our own. So if we are moving to such, then it is also important that we give a true picture of, closer to a true picture of how much we are generating in terms of the current value of goods and services in a given year, which is GDP. And I think, like I said, you can make any, let me just say someone who wasn't in Lusaka maybe 10 years ago and wants to get to certain places using the old routes, the old maps, they would certainly be lost. So even us, if we continue making all our macroeconomic objectives, setting them up every year in the budget based on the GDP, that is, I think, outdated, because internationally it's supposed to be 5 years update or rebasing. So it means there's somewhere where we are not actually, when we see that our policy interventions are not working, and in this global world, you want to compete with someone who is updating his GDP or rebasing the GDP within the frameworks or time frameworks given. I think you disadvantage yourselves. So for us, I think it's time. This should not be the last. We should ensure that we are timely because the world is moving very fast in terms of production of goods and services. More goods and services which we never thought would be sold are coming in. I was joking with colleagues, I think even Wakandeta can know that some of us grew up knowing Popo is for free. Now, it's in Lusaka where I came to see that you can buy Popo, you can buy Kotapera, and so forth. And very expensive because as we just knew it's for free. So these are some of the goods which now have got value that we need to pick and include and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mange. I'll go to Zam. Zam remeasured the economy, giving a better perspective of the total activity in the economy. And there is also a perspective that has been brought on the floor here in terms of debt to GDP ratio. Because you are measuring better, you are better able to understand what your debt to GDP ratio is. And because of, let's assume there will be a better debt to GDP ratio. What does it mean for you as a manufacturer? What does it mean in terms of the cost of borrowing? And why is this important in the overall, the process of GDP rebasing for Zambia Association of Manufacturers and the real sector in general?
Okay, thank you for that question. I think I'll focus more on the sector-specific impact of GDP rebasing. I think the other panelists have already spoken to the general impact on and how this activity will affect the economy in general. So from our end as manufacturers, we expect this exercise, first of all, to improve the way we capture our manufacturing sector by providing a more accurate and up-to-date reflections of what is happening in the economy. So with, I think you will agree with me, like ECZ said here, that there's a lot of activities that have happened since the last time we rebased our GDP in 2010. I think the economic establishment survey shows specifically on manufacturing that in 2010, for instance, we were standing at around 4,800 establishments. But that number has grown now in 2025 to about 31,000. So that really shows the level of transformation that has happened within the economy, and why this exercise is important to ensure that we update and we capture all these transformations in the way we capture our manufacturing sector. Yeah. You agree with me that at the moment, I think, like Zipa said, using outdated data to drive the different economic policies that we drive as an association doesn't really help. Yeah, that allows us to come up with policy suggestions that may not address the current situations, the current happenings in the manufacturing sector. So it's very important that this is updated, and it helps us capture the manufacturing sector contribution, for instance, to the entire economy, to employment creation, to value addition more accurately. And what also that does to us as an association that is heavily involved in providing evidence-based policy advocacy, it provides us with more reliable statistics that support the different interventions that or recommendations that we suggest to government in terms of providing options that are reflective of whatever is happening at the current period.
Okay. Are there times when you felt as an industry or an interest group that what is being reflected in the current numbers is not exactly what is happening on the ground?
I would say yes to some extent. Like I indicated, you understand that first of all, data is quite hard to find in Zambia, right? Especially when we drive down to subsector specific. Yeah, I think currently when we are providing our interventions, our analysis obviously ends at the macro level, right? In terms of the manufacturing sector, industry level. Yeah. So when we are providing interventions that are subsector specific, and we don't have statistics that guide such analysis, it becomes our recommendations becomes a bit vague in terms of what we are proposing to the government, right? So that ensures that by providing more updated statistics, it ensures that the recommendations that we make are up to date. And
Joseph Tembo is the director in charge of statistics at Zamstats, economic statistics at Zamstats there. Joseph, yes. Obviously, there is a data set that you are using to come to this. You also have a message for the public and the economy in general. Given what has been discussed by colleagues here, what is your message? Why are we doing this? What are the key objectives? Is there anything you need to add apart from the issue of the map of Lusaka and the free, avocado and purpose? I remember that very well. We used to have those things, yeah. But they are now, they've been commercialized. There was a time when, this generation, maybe except Madam, I'm not insulting you, me and him. There was a time when you would be told, no, goat meat, no. But goat meat is very pricey these days. Those things are coming in. There was a time when we didn't have, iPads, all these things. He gave an example of 94. Certain things were not there. All these mobile money, they were not there. And I'm sure for the younger persons, they will even wonder, how did we survive? We found a way. Somehow we found a way. We can't remember, but we found a way of surviving. Do you have a message?
Yes, thank you very much, moderator. There was a question you posed before I come to what you've asked me, where you asked the think tank and the academia on the debt to GDP ratio. And what was common from both submissions was the denominator. But I expected more so that the general public could understand how do you interpret the debt to GDP ratio when it's more what does it imply? When it's low, what does it imply? I wanted that to be clearer because,
Make it clear.
well, from my own recollection, when we are using a GDP which was calculated on an odd base year, it is lower. When we rebase, the GDP will definitely go up, meaning the denominator is bigger. When the denominator is bigger, it means when it divides into the numerator, the resultant becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, meaning it's better and better and better. I thought I should just add that dimension because we are the ones who are measuring the GDP. So we should ensure that that denominator is very, very accurate or closer to the correct map as he was alluding to it. So I thought I should add that so that it's clear. Like when you divide with a lower GDP, it means you're considered to be at a risk to lend money to. But when the denominator is big, you have room in which to maneuver. And I thought that's what, Doc, you are saying. Yeah, I agree with that. Now, what are we saying as Zamstats? I'm representing Zamstats. So for us, what we are adding more to this topic is we are adopting newer methods of recalibrating the GDP. The economy has evolved. There is the e-commerce now and what. So we are making sure that even in our rebasing process, we are integrating all that, the new industries, the new methods being used, the new data that has become available, and most importantly, because we are now moving at a very fast in terms of data availability, it has become more costly to do surveys to keep up with the pace. So we are now leveraging the administrative data. So we are integrating that so much in our work. I think this is one of the big achievements of this process we are doing. We have really relied on admin data. We have used data from ZRA. We have used data from PACRA. We have used data from Bank of Zambia. We have used data from ZICTA. You know, we are leveraging this so that it becomes cheaper, and we have to churn out results, I think, in real time. Remember, statistics have to be timely if they have to be relevant. So that's another angle we are taking as an agency. One thing I can say, I think, to the masses out there, especially that my neighbor here will be the next client in our next exercise, which is the 2026 Annual Enterprise Survey. Remember, we did the 2025 Economic Census. So there we drew a full list of all establishments existing in the country. We structured them. I think those are the statistics they were quoting. In 2010, the manufacturing sector had so many industries. Now it has so many. Now we have sampled from that because that is a statistical business register we created. We've sampled from there so that we now go and undertake the annual enterprise survey, which we shall get data now for completing the other cycle of the other part of the rebasing process. Remember, the framework we're using is a supply and use table. So the supply side has to be there and the use side, so that when we balance that, then we are able now to get the true picture as my colleagues were alluding to. So it's just to advocate through yourselves so that maybe you just become our champions in terms of publicity, to say we are coming, knocking, and please let the industries cooperate with our enumerators, and we get the good data that we need so that we can come up with that good GDP, which will be good for one aspect like the debt to GDP ratio. And there are so many ratios that depend on GDP, but yeah, that's what I can say for now.
Mr. Kawandala, a call for industry players to be more actively involved in this process. What is your message to them out there?
Yeah,
as ZAM?
Yes, I think as an association, first of all, we recognize the importance that ZAMstat has placed on ZAM. They extended an invitation for us to sit on the technical working group that is looking at the GDP rebasing and all. For us, we understand that our members are the producers of the data that will come and inform the measurement of economic performance, for instance, right? So what that does is, from our end, I think it's a commitment that we've made already to Zamstat, and I'll re-echo it, that we'll continue encouraging our members, our different members, to participate in this important exercise. Like I mentioned, remember that the more accurate our sector is measured, the more it assists governments to come up with interventions that really speaks to the different challenges that are happening in the sector. So the message really is just to encourage our members that as Zamstat starts undertaking this important exercise, can we participate and ensure that we provide the necessary statistics that Zamstat will require?
Thank you very much. That is not only for industry players, even I'm sure professional associations like EAZ, you do have a message beyond your grouping, Economic Association of Zambia. How important is it for associations to ensure that they make themselves available to the process, and so that we have quality control, we have, the process has got some integrity, and obviously credibility and comparability with the best standards out there. What's your message on those lines?
I'd encourage all professional bodies to participate in this, to help inform Zamstat and their own industry, provide as much information as possible. We've got, well, as an offshoot of economics, it covers a whole lot of industries, okay? We've got people in marketing, in accounting, in economics itself, in the various organizations where we belong. So it will be quite, it will be helpful if we can all participate and encourage everyone to help out in collecting data and help inform government on policy making.
Is there something you would like to see in the process as EAZ?
Well, I know Zamstat is doing a good job, a great job. Perhaps more up-to-date information, sticking to the system of national accounts, updating it or rebasing every 5 years as it recommends. Yeah, mostly that, and participation, and all industries and players out there being participative and contributing as much as possible, so that government is informed.
Thank you, Joseph. Dr. Mange, obviously, moving from 2010 to 2023, does it have implications on research, on what you teach in the classroom?
Yes, universities, we are more into teaching, research, and policy advice, and consultancy. As you see, the university is involved in research and innovation now. We have I think a big wing of the university, which is headed by, I think, all universities in the country, because that is in the Act. We have research and innovation, which should be promoted, but it should be based on timely data that is accurate and relevant, you see, for you to provide advice. And also to be, like our director indicated, GDP is attached to a lot of things. So if you have faced the correct measure, and also the actual GDP closer to what your country has, all these tax to debt GDP, the spending, spending GDP ratio, all these, when we are discussing with in class, all the courses, programs, it would be better to provide timely, accurate, and appropriate data as we discuss in class and during research, but also as partners, because ZAMSTATS is a national think tank for providing research information. I think what we want to see is that when I ask my students most of the times, I do ask them, if you are to collect data on something, what comes to your mind first? Where do you go first? What institution should come to your mind? So I think as we do this exercise, sensitization and awareness that information-seeking behavior or data literacy is very important, and knowing the institutions that provide it and that provide accurate. Various surveys that we do, you do. I know a number of departments and schools at the University of Zambia, they do partner with you, and we also provide internship to our students and so forth. So it's one way in which we can also ensure that we are in sync with ZAMSTATS. But most importantly, you know, various academics are involved in research and consultancy. And when you look at, if you have weak ZAMSTATS, I think with providing outdated information, I think the decisions won't be okay. But what I would also call in the process is the informality of our business, of our economy, how you can really capture much of the information. I know there are new systems, new techniques now that you can put in place to ensure that we capture what the economy produces, what it sells, what it exports. So I think the university can also participate. They are highly skilled people I think there shouldn't be a difference between ZAMSTATS, UNZA, and other universities, the Bank of Zambia, those partners that you work with, the Zambia Revenue Authority. So I think it should be a partnership that should continue. And for me, I would really urge you to, I know you are already connected to the university, especially the University of Zambia, but through the Vice Chancellor's office, we have 2 deputies, and one of them, Professor Kalusopa, heads research and innovation. We're trying to commercialize a number of innovations, to patent, but all those, you find that research is about where do we seek the information. That's why we ask our students, what should come to your mind first? Any study. So you find that you should think of the ZAMSTATS. And I think this is an opportunity. You can make a lot of noise as you do this so that people know what you do. And various surveys here, you find that a number of people may not know them. They'll go around the different institutions and be as open as you can. A government institution. Our president, I think in his first or second year, there was that freedom of information bill that he signed. And that information, I think let's not take it about this political noise of journalists and so forth. Actually, the most important is the information from ZAMSTATS and the related institutions, so that we don't have situations whereby you have put the Zambia Health Demographic Survey on the website. You go to a ministry, they are telling you we need permission from the PS for something that's on the website, or to work there. So you're doing well. This is something we support for us from the economics, finance, and business, and our school, the Graduate School of Business. Please partner with it. I know there are many other economics-related schools and departments, but you cover everything, like GDP, correct? Everything. And we are happy, that's why we came. so that I think the graduate school of business is represented, and I think all of us know our head for the graduate school of business, Professor Luida Wazoka. I think he's the one who was supposed to sit here. So I came to sit in his
You've
place.
ably represented him. You've ably represented him. Thank you very much, Dr. Mange. So, Malindi, is this a good thing for you as an institution and for researchers? And what are your final thoughts?
So I think when I was speaking earlier, I mentioned how for us policy analysts, data is very critical. And in the context of the discussion we're having today on GDP, one of our flagship projects that we undertake every year is the analysis of the national budget. Now, in every aspect of the budget that we assess, we always use GDP as a base. When you report that public expenditure has increased from one year to the next, it will show you an increase or a decrease, but it doesn't say much unless you relate it to GDP. So this is just to emphasize how important this measure being updated and accurately reflecting the economy as it is today is for our work. And just to appreciate the efforts that Zamstat is doing, and I think they've also done a very good job, I think, with communicating the process. And maybe something that we would want to emphasize from our perspective is sometimes data may be available, but is it accessible is another question. So we do sometimes tend to have challenges accessing some of that data, and maybe during this process, it's something that we wish maybe can be addressed so that it's easier for institutions like ours, and I'm sure even academic institutions, to access this data, to use it for conducting research and drawing out recommendations for the government. And maybe just to go back just slightly to the debt to GDP ratio, you ideally want that ratio to be as small as possible, because GDP indicates our capacity to generate income to repay debt. So if our GDP is smaller than debt, it raises alarms that we may not have the capacity to pay back. So I just wanted to add to the discussion that Mr. Tembo brought up.
Thank you very much. I'll turn to Mr. Chamnora and the Economic Association of Zambia. Is this a good thing? What are your final thoughts?
Yes, it's a good thing. If we look at most of the recent surveys that have been done by Zamstat, for example, on the economic establishments that were counted, you realize that almost half of them are only in Copperbelt and Lusaka. What about the rest of the other 8 provinces? I know there's a lot of potential there, so that should inform government policy going forward. And also the job growth from 2010, we only had 385,000 employees in the formal sector, and in the last economic census, we discovered it's over, is it 1.1 million? And also the number of the micro enterprises, you find that most of them only employ just one person. Probably the owner is the only employee of a micro institution. So maybe policy going forward will have to look at how to expand that, how to help the micro players to improve and to grow. And also, it's also speaking to that growth, or the difference between the 2010 census and now, and all the surveys are also speaking to, say, the tax collection on ZRA, coming up with new ways to collect taxes, knowing that there's an increased number of players now in the economic sector. So there's quite a lot there. And also, as we discussed earlier on, we've seen that it will help improve the country's credit worthiness. Okay. And also, it will help cement Zambia as a middle-income country, because with an increased or rebased GDP, which is definitely going to go higher, you realize that also the per capita income of the country will also go higher. So that should cement our middle income status as a country as well.
Is there something you'd like to add, given that we are now going to a close, which you think, I needed to say this, but he hasn't asked. Is there something else? Not yet.
Not yet, yeah.
Yeah, we'll turn to Zambia Association of Manufacturers. You've heard the inputs from research, academics, professional institutions, but you are there in value addition, in creation of wealth. What are your final thoughts?
I think my final thoughts are that, first of all, just to re-echo the importance of having updated statistics, and also the importance that plays, especially even from the government side, as we try to industrialize our manufacturing sector. For instance, we rely on data that is quite accurate. My final thoughts would be, and perhaps maybe the recommendations, and something that I want to see at the end of the process is that ZAMSTATs go further in providing statistics that are disaggregated up to the subsector level. I think at the moment it's a bit hard to provide policy analysis on subsector specific. Let's say if I want to do an analysis on the performance of the agro-processing, for instance, yeah? So it's very hard for me because there's no data. So I'll have to rely on the performance of the overall manufacturing industry. So that would be one of the key recommendations that we want to see. Can we disaggregate this data and ensure that data is provided even at lower levels to provide more targeted policy recommendations? I think it's, I was looking at the time it would take this process to end. It would have been very key to update these statistics even as we develop our national development plans. For instance, we're in the process. Yeah, we're in the process of developing our 9th development plan. And obviously the statistics, the data that we're using at the moment, I think we've discussed that it's quite outdated, and it's still informing our formulation of priorities. So I don't know how that, what the impact that would have in terms of the different policies that will be developed or priorities that will be set in the 9th development plan, seeing that this process will take up to December to finish.
That is a very critical point. I will leave it to ZAMSTATs to take. But before we come to Joseph, are there any comments from the audience? Does anyone want to say something, ask, make a comment? I think you've been very clear. Joseph, you've heard what stakeholders have said here. You are in the mix of things. There was an issue of, new techniques coming on board. Is there an assurance that you are up to date with the processes that you are undertaking? Is it international standard? Is it the latest of processes? And then there is obviously the challenge that is coming from ZAM. You may wish to comment on it as we come to a close with the remarks from the Statistician General.
Thank you very much. Let me first comment on the new approaches, new technologies. I think it's something that has been emphasized even by our board chairperson to say we don't have to do things business as usual now. We're in this era where technology is moving at a fast pace. So how best can we leverage that? So I can gladly mention here that one area we have put on the table to try and see the best ways of collecting data, even in real time, is relying on remote sensing. We have been having discussions with the Remote Sensing Center for Zambia in the area of agriculture, estimating yields and stuff like that. And also, using technology, also partnering with ZRA, using the smart invoicing to help us get retail prices for these big chain stores to be used in the compilation of the CPI, which eventually, produces the inflation. So we are trying to align ourselves to what's new and what's the best international standard. So that assurance, I can assure you, we are following. Zambia was recently visited and is part of a team that is looking at the preparedness of members of the African Union and maybe the continent as a whole. How prepared are we now to move to the 2025 system of national accounts? We had an assessment done by ADB at Zamstats where we were assessed, and I can assure you that the assessment is bringing smiles to my Statistician General there. Because even the system of national accounts for 2008, Zambia was one of the member states that even had gone to achieve certain milestones which other member states were grappling with. And it was even made as a focal point in the area of national accounts for the SADC. So we are really ensuring that what we do is based on international best practice. Now, there is a question here or a concern from our colleague from ZAM. We just recently conducted the 2025 Economic Establishment Census, and we used best international practices. World Bank was even there to even give us some oversight. So it is something that is endorsed as a best practice. What data came from the 2025 economic is basically to answer to ZAM's concerns. That's why you were deliberately chosen, sir, to be part of the technical working group on GDP rebasing, because we want you to define what agro-processing subsector is. When you give us that, us will just say, okay, show us which activities do you consider agro-processing? You point A, B, C, D. Us will link those activities to the ISIC codes. So each industry, that's maybe those who are producing maheu, is that agro-processing? I take it's yes, because they are using maize and other things to process that. That's agro-processing. Dairy producing, and so on and so forth. So we categorize each business entity to an ISIC, which we can aggregate as a subsector, agro-processing, sugar sector. The economists have got very interesting terms, which are non-statistical, but we have to understand them so that we give them the information they want. So that information, rest assured, as of latest 2025 economic census, it can be given to you. Let's just find time through my Statistician General. We'll give you information, anonymized, of course. We don't want to breach confidentiality issues, but it will give you a picture of the agro-processing, whatever terminology you shall come up with, but us will link it to the IC code by industry. Then you will understand the spread or architecture of your manufacturing sector. I think I'll end here, Mr. Gambetta. Thank you.
Thank you, Atembo. Between now and December, I'm sure the Statistician General will share thoughts on that. But for me, it's just to thank you, Tim, for sparing your time coming through to have this conversation. But this is just one of the many times that we need to talk. We will obviously keep talking, keep engaging, so that we move together. All facets of the economy need to move together so that we can have one focus for the betterment of our country. Let's give the colleagues a round of applause, please. Thank you very much. It is now my honor and privilege to call upon the Statistician General to give us closing remarks and bring this program to an end. Thank you. You may take your position and speak from where you stood. There, just there. Dana, can we help with the microphone, please?
Thank you very much. Really grateful to our panelists, our partners. We really cherish their partnerships. We'll keep saying this in all our processes. We cannot do it without partnerships, including the media. We cannot work without the media. They are part of the National Statistical System. The National Statistical System is made up of producers, users, academic and training institutions, their cooperating partners, and the media. So we are all really, really grateful that we're working together to grow Zambia's national statistical system. Perhaps I'd just like to draw your attention to some highlights in terms of GDP rebasing in selected countries and some comparisons of what these exercises reveal. We have South Africa, whose base year changed from 2010 to 2015, giving a 5 years difference. From the GDP rebasing, it moved from 328 billion US dollars, and after rebasing, it became 364. That was 2020 estimate, giving an increase of 11%. Nigeria, which rebased its GDP in 2010 from 1990, spanning over 20 years. Its GDP before was 270 billion US dollars. It moved to 510 billion US dollars after the rebasing, after 20 years, giving an 89, almost 90% increase. Ghana, last rebasing in 2006 from the previous 1993, giving a 13-year difference. Its GDP before rebasing was 15 billion US dollars. It moved to 31 billion US dollars, giving a 60% increase. You can see the same trend for Kenya. It's also moved. And Tanzania, it moved. For Zambia, with our last rebasing before the 2010 being 1994, it gave a span of 16 years. And our GDP then was 78 billion US dollars in 1994. It moved to 94 billion US dollars in 2010, giving an increase of 21%. Here we are rebasing from our 2010 with the new base year being 2023 to give a span of 13 years. And we'll be looking at 94 billion US dollar as the last figure when we rebased in 2010. And indeed, by December, we are hoping to give you the new figure. But if you look at the trend, depending on the number of years between the rebasing when it's done, you can see that of all those countries, South Africa stands out because it rebased after 5 years. And 5 years is the recommended period within which a country should rebase. You can see their GDP increased just by 11%. For all those countries, 2013, you can see the level. So given 13 years, your guess is as good as mine. I think UNZA would best even give us a figure almost right away. Given that difference, what our red stands for there, we can just imagine what level we'll have, but definitely we can see the trend or the direction. So definitely we hear you, and I want to assure that as ZAMSTATS, our ideal situation is also to comply with the recommendation of rebasing our GDP every 5 years. We have had challenges in the past, but we are here. We are very glad. We've made a lot of strides, given that we've undertaken the Economic Establishment Census, which is a huge input, as well as leveraging on the administrative data, as has been mentioned, and the business enterprise survey that we'll be undertaking soon. And therefore, that just means that we'll be looking now at the remaining activities, which is the completion of the final data validation, balancing of the supply and use tables, reconciliation of sector estimates, quality assurance reviews, peer review by technical experts, approval through established governance structures, preparation of detailed metadata and methodological documentation, which is critical, and preparation of dissemination products, stakeholder briefings, and publication of the revised GDP series. These then will be the final steps which are critical to ensure that the published statistics meet the highest standards of quality and credibility. What are the expected benefits? Most of them have been described by my good colleagues here. Indeed, it will include more accurate measurement of Zambia's economy, improved sectoral estimates, stronger evidence for policy making, enhanced macroeconomic analysis, improved monitoring of development programs, better international comparability, stronger investor confidence, improved debt sustainability analysis, as well as better monitoring of productivity and structural transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, what is our key message? Allow me to emphasize one very important point, and that is GDP rebasing does not create new economic activity, as has been stated by my colleagues. Rather, it improves how economic activity is measured. Therefore, if the size of GDP changes following the rebasing, it should not be interpreted as an overnight increase or decrease in national wealth. Instead, it reflects improved statistical measurement based on better data and internationally accepted methodologies. In appreciation, I wish to sincerely thank all institutions within the National Statistical System for continued collaboration, in particular, the institutions represented here, the Ministry of Finance and National Planning, the Bank of Zambia, Zambia Revenue Authority, PACRA, line ministries, academia, the private sector, and development partners. GDP rebasing, ladies and gentlemen, you agree, is truly a national undertaking requiring collaboration across all sectors. In conclusion, I'd just like to say that as we move towards completion of this important national exercise, I encourage all stakeholders to continue supporting ZAMSTATS in strengthening Zambia's statistical system. Reliable statistics are essential for sound policy decisions, sustainable development, and inclusive economic growth. I am confident that today's discussion will deepen public understanding of GDP rebasing and demonstrate why investing in high-quality official statistics is an investment in Zambia's future. With these remarks, it is now my pleasure to officially declare this panel discussion closed and wish to thank everyone that has been part of it, and we really, really wish you all the best in the rest of the day's event. I do wish to recognize our board representative. We're very happy to have you with us, sir. We appreciate the support that we get from the board as an agency and as management of Zambia Statistics Agency. Thank you so much, especially Mr. Kandeta, for always being our champion with regards to statistical publicity. And we hear you, statistical literacy. We'll continue to do our programs. This is precisely why we are here, even during this year's show, so that we can interact with our users as well as demonstrate the many statistics that we have. Thank you so much, and God bless us all.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So may I invite the board member and the SG to just come and join us here. We have a group photo. Can we switch off the screen, please? Switch off the screen. It will distort our photos.